stage.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I should have sent my highlight tape. 360 dunking like that as well. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. I know we're all really excited to have you here. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, and what you do?
Well, first and foremost, that video brings back memories. 30 pounds lighter than I had hair. But the memories are stay with me forever. And I just want to thank you for bringing me here. I've learned so much in the last two presentations. I'm not really a numbers guy, but if the book sales fail, maybe TV Bank has an opportunity. We shall see.
So you've outlined 5 key pillars in your book. I also read the book. It's great. I think you guys are all going to really like it. Can you walk us through them and which you feel are most critical when teams like ours are working in high-stakes environments where success impacts the entire enterprise?
Well, Celebrate Your Wins is just a memoir about my career as a basketball player, some strategies that I used to be really good in basketball and really good in business, and really just great storytelling. And the basis of the book, the fundamentals of the book come from 5 pillars. And each 5, pretty much laid the foundation of who I am, and they brought me great success. Pillar number 1 is being able to visualize and imagine. Everything that's happened in my life, I kind of visualize and imagine it first, and it feels like deja vu over and over again with some of the successes that I had, and it was all because I visualize and imagine it first. When it comes to imagination, guys, there's no limit on creativity. Just remember that. There's no limit on creativity. Number 2 is, second pillar is having a competitive spirit. Being able to outlast your opponents, and don't get beat to the punch. You guys are TD Bank, right? So what happens if Wells Fargo comes up with that ad before you? You don't feel too good about it, right? So you don't want to let that happen. You want to always beat your opponents to the punch. Third pillar is perseverance and mental toughness, and I think this is one that we'll really talk about a lot today. The resiliency and mental toughness and perseverance that it takes to be, where you are. You guys had a very successful last fiscal year. Heading into the new year, you want to do just as well. But it wasn't easy. There were bumps in the road, I'm sure. And when they are, you have to be mentally tough. And then, hard work. There's no limit to how hard you can work. Sometimes you just got to put on your hard hat and go to work. And these are very important skills that one must have. And then lastly, confidence. Believing in yourself, believing in your skill set, believing in your ideas, being confident in your abilities.
As a Duke basketball player, you've had to push through intense competition, setbacks, and pressure. There's one quote in the book that really resonated with me, and I think it really talked through our entire last year at TD. We mentioned it earlier, October 10th was a big day for us. So the quote's on page 62. Players need to understand that there will be knockbacks, knockdowns, and sometimes even knockouts. Despite failing, you must get up, dust yourself off, and keep playing. I had to rely on my mental toughness to persevere time and time again, as I had no choice but to accept this option. What role did resilience play in your journey, and how can we apply that same mindset when facing challenges in our customer engagements?
That's a great question. Resilience was huge for me, and I think it leads me to my game-winning shot story. You guys want to hear my game-winning shot story? Somebody in here went to Maryland. So I was giving them some jabs earlier about that game-winning shot. But in 1996, my sophomore year, I had a chance to make a game-winning shot against Carolina, which is our rival. And so we're at Carolina. Wojo has the basketball. He's our point guard. He penetrates, and he passes to me. I'm on the right wing. Shot fake, 1 or 2 dribble pull up. I let it fly. It was straight as an arrow, but it was short. I missed. This is a shot that I've taken several times, but I missed. I remember being the last one in the locker room. Water's raining down my head. And I say to myself, self, if I ever get a chance to knock down a game-winning shot, I'm going to knock it down. Listen, I can't make this stuff up. 2 weeks later, at Maryland, same situation. Wojo has the basketball. He's our point guard. This time, I'm on the left side of the floor. He kicks to me. 3, 2, 1. All net. All net. And we win the game. And the crowd goes wild. Not really. We were at Maryland, so you can hear a pin drop. But our fans and our team, we were super excited about it. So, you know, looking back at that, the takeaway for me is that one of the reasons why I made the shot against Maryland is because I missed the one against Carolina. I failed. I had to figure out and make a certain adjustment so that if I got in that situation again, I could be successful. And sure enough, you know, all the hard work that I put in, I was in that situation and I was able to knock it down. And so to me, that's resiliency 101. And I want you guys to share that same quality as you move forward.
Switching gears a little bit, you know, we've had a lot of change recently, whether it's organizationally or within our own individual groups, processes, maybe DD memos in the future, who knows? But change is never easy, whether it's a new coach, a new system, or a new role. How did you adapt when faced with major changes in your basketball career? And what advice would you give us as we navigate organizational shifts at TD?
Yeah, you know, sometimes you have to stick to your guns and stick to your fundamentals. I remember, you know, being an overseas basketball player. You know, obviously the NBA is the highest level of basketball, and that's everyone's dream to play in the NBA. I had a few tryouts, and I made it through the preseason with the Detroit Pistons, but I wasn't a perennial NBA guy. So I spent most of my professional career playing overseas, and that was a huge eye-opener. You know, 10,000 miles away from friends and family, different food, different language, different culture, everything was so different. I had to remind myself that the ball is still round, the court is still 94 feet long, and the basket is still a hoop, the ball is still round. It's just basketball. And so, you know, when I find myself getting into these ruts, I always try to fall back on the fundamentals, the basics of who I am and what I've become and how I got here. And usually that gets me over those trying times.
Yeah. What advice would you give someone who feels stuck or overwhelmed during change and is struggling to see a path forward?
You know, mental toughness plays a huge part in that. You know, I think for me, another period that was kind of dark for me was life after basketball. You know, and you know this, as a basketball player, you live it. You know, my dad put a ball in my hand at 5, and that's what I did throughout. You know, I was really, really good in middle school. I was really, really good in high school. Played in college, played professionally. But there's an expiration date on basketball. You know what I'm saying? And it's not LeBron James at 42. It's usually somewhere closer to the low to mid 30s. So you have your whole life ahead of you. So what do you do? And for about 2 years, I was lost. You know, I graduated from Duke. I got a degree in sociology, minor in history, but I'm not playing anymore. And so, you know, luckily I developed some passions and some habits and some things that I like to do outside of basketball. And that kind of helped me push me along to my next journey, which was starting Game Ready Skills and Development Training, which is basically a training company where I train kids on skill development training, speed agility training. We do camps, we do clinics. And I always found myself teaching the game and teaching young people what I knew. And so that kind of springboarded me. And so, you know, the resiliency there, the confidence that I had, you know, in my abilities to teach, you know, some of those things were the things that got me through.
Yeah, I do think perception is, you know, how you look at different situations helps and changes your mindset as well. Like you mentioned, you missed that game-winning buzzer beater, but you had the mentality where you said, that's not going to happen again, and I'm going to make the next shot. So using every opportunity to grow and to learn is really important. Jim Ritchie said this earlier, which I really liked. We win together. We're a whole team. I can't get a deal done without credit management, without risk, without my incredible CSAs, without the closing team, without anyone else helping me. So this wasn't a key pillar in your book, but I thought that it was a topic that you continuously kept referring back to and talking about. And that was your team. And whether it's your physical teammates or it's the people that are around you and supporting you, your coaches, family members, faculty, staff, how can we all at TD ensure that we're not only applying these pillars individually, but also reinforcing them as a team?
It's a great question. It's a great question. One of the things that Coach K talked about and taught us is that we should be playing for the name on the front of the jersey and not the name on the back of the jersey. And so when you talk about building team, you have to throw yourself into the team concept. And some of those individual accolades will come later. And that for sure was the case, at Duke. My best year was my sophomore year. I was all ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and on a lot of short lists of being, NBA draft pick. And the reason why that happened is because I threw myself into the team concept. And we had a decent, really good year that year. Made the tournament and did well. But I believe that the team concept, kind of catapulted my individual accomplishments. And I know all of us want to do well. We want to be recognized for some of the things that we do individually. But that can only happen if you throw yourself into the team concept first and play for the name on the front of the jersey and not on the back.
Athletes often talk about playing for something bigger than themselves. How do you stay anchored to purpose, and how might we stay connected to our mission of supporting our clients and colleagues during times of organizational transition?
Yeah, that's a good question. The biggest thing is change is all around us, and we gotta be privy to change. And one of the things that I regret, and I talked about this earlier, is not leaving my sophomore year to enter the NBA draft. And I didn't leave because I felt I wasn't good enough to leave. Just before me, Grant Hill, Christian Laettner, and Bobby Hurley were three of the greatest players that ever put on a Duke uniform, were at Duke. And they didn't leave to go early. But what I didn't know, and what was happening right under our noses, was time was changing. Things were changing. And now, underclassmen are starting to leave early. Players are getting drafted now on potential as opposed to accomplishment. And so, most draft boards in 1996, I was a first round pick, somewhere between 1 and 20. And so, but I didn't have the confidence and the wherewithal to see forward and forward think to make that jump. And as you deal, with your clients and as you deal with all these things, we have to be forward thinkers and be a couple steps ahead and be okay with change.
Were there any times of change that you specifically really resisted but realized that was, very impactful for your long run and for your, either whether it was your basketball career or your career post-basketball?
Well, the game is so ever evolving. I remember when I played, the three-point shot was a part of the game, but now it's a key component of the game. And sometimes it's hard to watch basketball with all these three-point shots being taken. But this is the evolution and change. Another thing that we're seeing in college basketball is NIL and the transfer portal. And my only question is, and I talked to you about this, is where was that in 1996? Are there reparations? Because under those guidelines, I probably would have been, a $1 or $2 million player. And so, the game is ever evolving and ever changing. And we have to always be open to what that change might be. From 8-tracks to cassette tapes to CDs to now, everything is digital. It's ever changing. We gotta be willing to go with those punches.
How can that perspective help us embrace shifts happening in our own organization?
We talked about this before, is sticking to our fundamentals. One of the things that Coach K also did that he was a master at was teaching defense. And, you know, I'm an offensive guy. I want to score. But truly, you win games, you win championships, you win league championships by being a great defensive team. And so anytime we struggled and, you know, we were in a rut and we couldn't get things going, we really buckled down defensively, and we were able to always stay in games until our offense picked back up, and then we would just dominate you. And so what I'm talking about is sticking to your core values and your fundamentals. You know, so now when things go left and you're not sure, you got to know what those core values are and always stick to those to propel us to where we need to go.
Something I always say, basketball is a game of runs, and momentum can shift very easily. I think we've all kind of seen that the last few years just in terms of our lending environment, where, you know, some banks were not lending in 2022 and 2023, and TD was able to take a lot of market share during those times. But now a lot of banks are back, and it's very competitive to get deals done. So how do you keep yourself and your teammates focused on a shared vision when everything around them feels like it's shifting?
Yeah, I think team building activities, spending more time together. You know, I found that working with my teammates ended up being working with my best friends. And so for me, you know, the more time we spent, the harder we played for each other. And, you know, each one of you probably has families, married, kids, and the whole shooting match. But as a whole, you guys should spend more time together and work together as a team and become, you know, work buddies, accountability partners, if you will. One of my roommates, his name was Trajan Langdon. His name was the Alaskan Assassin. He was one of the greatest shooters in Duke history. And he was one of the hardest workers as well. And we got a great relationship and built a great relationship because we became accountability partners. And we would go with each other to the gym, and we rebound and shoot, and we get shots up, we work out, and then that chemistry was able to show on the basketball court. And so if you guys spent more time together and did more team building activities like this, I think your chemistry will show on the court.
You mentioned this earlier a lot in your book, but the NBA was always a big dream for you, and you had to shift your mentality to go and play overseas instead. But do you think that having that shift in perspective and change was good for you in the long run, and having that opportunity to go abroad versus playing back
Absolutely.
here?
Playing overseas was a great opportunity. Had I not played overseas, I would have never seen the places that I went to. 2 years in France, Slovenia, Amsterdam, China, Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, you name it, passport full of stamps. And it gave me an opportunity to see the world and see how the game is played. But most importantly, it gave me a chance to grow up and really become a man, being away from home and seeing how others live. You know, America is definitely the greatest country on the planet. And but I've been to some places where you're like, oof, or warm water. We're talking about taping your own ankles. Having to wash your own uniforms, and some of these things give you perspective. And I was very appreciative of that. And the NBA dream, I think going for it is the most important thing. Having the discipline, the perseverance to try to reach a goal. Make or miss it. But going for it, I think is huge. And as you have these deadlines and have all these deadlines to meet and these clients to meet and these deals to close, we got to keep that in perspective.
Talk to us a little bit about your thought process about writing a book and why you did it and how you liked writing.
That's a great question. You tend to ask great questions.
Thanks. The thinking thing doesn't stop.
I like it. So Celebrate Your Wins was my COVID project. During COVID, we all had a lot of free time, twiddling our thumbs at home, doing nothing. And people had always told me that I need to write a book. Such a good storyteller, and I've had so many incredible things happen in my life. And so, I had a co-writer, Elise K. Williams, and we just went through like an interview process, and we would speak and do an interview kind of like this for 3 hours, and she would put pen to paper, and we put it together. And 4 years later, this is the end result. But I'm gonna tell you, the most important and gratifying part of this whole project was being able to do the audiobook. And so if you guys get a chance, go to Audible, and there's an audiobook for Celebrate Your Wins, narrated by yours truly. And that was really, really cool.
I'm going to go off script a little bit, but do you have a favorite memory from playing basketball, whether it's a specific play, a specific game? When you think back to your career, is there one thing that always stands out to you?
There's so many moments. The game winning shot, against Maryland. Receiving the letter to play in the McDonald's All-American game. Going to McDonald's All-American game and winning the dunk contest. Meeting some of my best and favorite heroes. Like, I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised, huge Laker fan. And so in the 8th grade, I was pretty good. And I was being recruited to go to a school called Chapman, which is out in Palos Verdes. If you guys have been in California, Palos Verdes is a very ritzy, classy area. And one of the huge donors there, his name was Steve Lombardo. He was also the head doctor for the Los Angeles Lakers. And so the head coach goes to him and says, look, Ricky, look, Steve, we got this kid, Ricky Price. We really want him to come to our school. And so, to kind of seal the deal, they get me tickets to go to the Laker game. And me and my mom, we go to the Laker game. I'll never forget this. When you come into the Forum, which is where they played at the time, you come in and you walk down. And so, I'm thinking, all right, we'll be on the second level or something like that. That'd be cool. And we keep walking. All right, maybe we're lower second level. That'd be cool. And we keep walking. And it's maybe, first level. Winning. And we keep walking all the way, and we have floor seats in the mid-'80s for the Lakers. And so I'm there early, 2 hours before the game, and so the players are warming up, and Dr. Lombardo calls me over, Ricky, come here. Brings me over to the court. And then he says, Irving, come over and meet somebody. I'm like, Irving? What the hell is that? He meant Irving Magic Johnson, which is his government real name. So Irving trots over. We all know him as Magic. And this is my favorite player of all time. This is my hero. This is everything to me. And he looks just like he looks on TV. He's got the knee braces on. He's got the short shorts and the socks. He's got the Converse weapons on. Smile is just unbelievable. Comes over, hey Ricky, how you doing? I heard you got some game. And I'm like, yeah, my goal is to be as good as you. And we shake hands, and he goes and he finishes the warm-up. My mom's watching the whole thing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this might be the greatest basketball moment I've had in my life. And I rarely tell that story, but that is one of my fondest memories of being a basketball player, is meeting my childhood hero.
I loved reading about that in the book, because you could feel your excitement when you're reading it.
I'm still excited.
Something we've talked a lot about today, goals for 2026. What do you hope happens in the new year?
Well, you guys, and you was talking about this, there's a lot of change and reorg. And I'm going through a little bit of a reorg myself right now. And so, I've been training kids for the last 14 years at Game Ready. And, because of the book and because people have been asking me to speak, I'm already doing corporate education events with new corporate education, book signings. The new path is motivational speaking. And that's kind of the direction that I'm going. And so for 2026, we're going to step away from Game Ready and we're going to do more speaking. So hopefully, I'm good at this, and you guys have learned something. and are inspired by some of my words. But you know, I have a great passion for the game. I love talking about it, and there's so many parallels between business, basketball, business, sports that can be translated. And you know, I hope to be the one to kind of mend that bridge.
Nice. I'm going to open it up for any questions in the audience. Larry?
You mentioned the 5 pillars. In times of like adversity or disruptions in your life, which one do you think is most important that you would lean
Well,
on?
obviously, you know, mental toughness, competitive spirit, and confidence. You know, we don't talk about confidence enough, but you know, it's very important that you believe in your abilities, believe in your teammates, believe in your ideas, hold your head up high, ask questions first. You know, these are all things that show great confidence that you have to have, especially in times of peril. You gotta fall back on some of that. Yes.
You talk about mental toughness and confidence levels. That just doesn't happen out of thin air. So what made you confident? What made you have mental toughness?
That's a great question. I think confidence comes from the work that you put in. Because I spent hours upon hours working on my game, you know, I was always confident in it. I knew that I could beat you. Eventually, the cream was going to rise to the top. I've been working too hard. You know, 6'6", I'm long, I'm lanky. I have the athleticism. I'm prepared. I've been working hard enough. And so eventually, it's going to turn around. And I think that's when you gain, you know, your stripes as with mental toughness, with confidence. Yes.
Looking at how to use sports side of it, what's the best advice you give parents of young athletes?
Ooh, you know, I coached AAU for a long time. We had a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team that were really, really good. We sent, you know, 15 guys to Division I, and we didn't have a coach who had a kid on the team, so it didn't get any more, you know, fair than what we did. And the parents drove me crazy. You guys are absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure some of you have kids who are in AAU sports, and you guys think that your kids are just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And they probably are in your mind. But basketball can be very unforgiving, and there's so many great players coming up the ranks. And so you don't just have to be good and have to have a great jump shot and have to be athletic. You have to have the measurables, you know, and then you have to have a little bit of luck. And so as a trainer, I've been fortunate to have parents who are willing to invest in their kids. And to me, if you have a kid who's a straight A student, stays out of trouble, does his chores, and does everything he's supposed to do, why shouldn't we invest in some of the things he or she wants to do? And I've had parents over the years, you know, who did that, and as a result, we accomplished great things. And I think the last part about this is most parents know, they really know that their kid is not going to probably go to college or go to pro. All right, but that's okay. It's the journey that they're interested in. It's the toughness and the discipline and the hard work. And all of these principles are going to be very important as they get older in college and beyond. And so, you know, I feel good that I was able to be a part of that. And it only happened because I had parents who allowed me to do that.
I have another one that I thought of. You talked a lot about, in your book, about being a highly defensive threat, and that was not something that really came to you in the beginning and something you developed and grew throughout your career. I was a defensive-minded individual on the court.
You look very defensive.
Yeah. But I think that's a very interesting position for a player to take, specifically in basketball when there are so many statistics. You see, you know, points are a big one. How many points did you get on a given night? You had great offensive stats as well. But how did that mindset switch for you, and how would you kind of train and be ready to go in a role that maybe doesn't get highlighted as much as the offensive side?
That's a great question. You know, at Duke, it was imperative that you play defense. You couldn't play for Coach K if you didn't play defense. And so I had to learn that real quick. And as a freshman, you know, getting beat to the middle a couple times, not getting there for help side, not taking charges, got me right here. Good old bench.